The Bobby O Show.
Welcome to the Bobby O Show. My name is Bob O. Potzner. I've got a really fun show lined up for today, but I just want to tell you we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, perhaps on my end. So if I sound metallic-y, that's not my natural voice, and we're doing the best we can to fix it. But I have a show today with a mental health professional, one of my favorite people, let alone one of my favorite guests, Jennifer Champagne, and we're going to talk about different issues. We're going to have a nice conversation as though we're sitting around having a vanilla milkshake. Talking as two friends who have, I think, things to offer for people who right now are having some difficulties dealing with certain issues. I know, for example, I am still disappointed very much at the results of the election of November 5th, 2024, which was my birthday. And I had delegated my birthday wish to Kamala Harris. Didn't come true. But we have people like Jennifer to keep us perky and smiley. This is the Bobby O. Jennifer Champagne, let's say hello. Hi, Jennifer.
Bob.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Jennifer and I work professionally together. We're also very friendly. And I'm a divorce attorney in many respects. And she does a lot of mental health work, helping us before the divorce and after for our clients. But also she has a lot to offer and is a past president of one of the major organizations for divorce. I'll let her tell us about that in a moment, called CCND. Jennifer, tell us about yourself before we get into our topics of conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. As you mentioned, I'm a mental health professional. I work primarily with divorcing families before and after their divorce. The before work is for families trying to figure out how to separate their households and care for their children in two different places. And the after work is for the families who have separated their households and are struggling with the day-to-day tasks related with raising children in two households. That is the practice that I have been doing for about 35 years now. In addition to that, I'm an adjunct professor at Quinnipiac Law School, teaching a course on divorce and the family. And as Bob mentioned, I continue to be very involved in our organization of the state, which is the nonprofit of Connecticut Council for Non-Adversarial Divorce, and I am past president of that organization.
Do you sleep at all?
Not well.
We'll get into that. If you've watched some of my shows, I've done some shows on collaborative divorce, which is a methodology for divorce cases in which the traditional model of two lawyers get involved with two different clients and try to work things out, which happens 90% of the time. The collaborative model is a less adversarial process, and often there's a mental health coach like Jennifer who will help out. And I think one of the all-time great cases I had was with Jennifer, in which we had a couple, unfortunately, who lost a child. And the other lawyer and I knew it was going to be a difficult process. And we decided to have Jennifer come in on day one. And Jennifer was very, very helpful because, try as we might, the training for a lawyer, even though I'm a sort of a, quote, amateur psychologist, unquote, as are most lawyers, because if you do divorce law, you have to be. But we knew we needed Jennifer's help, and we literally met 15 times, whatever number it was. And Jennifer brought her oranges and brought some cookies, and I would bring some pastry or whatever. And invariably, one person, the lawyers, the parties, Jennifer would cry, and we needed Jennifer to help out. So having a mental health professional in divorce cases is very important. What we want to talk about more, though, today is Jennifer was on a show several years ago with me. And Jennifer will tell you she had breast cancer. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but we went through her situation with her and how she dealt with it. And we want to talk a little about that to set up discussing how she's doing now, both mentally and physically. So Jennifer, do you want to take it away in that regard and give us a little background, please?
Sure. So in 2019, I learned that I had breast cancer. And after some conversations with my medical team, made the decision that a double mastectomy was the best option for me to go. It was about a 9-month process. And during that time, I was pretty comfortable with the decision that I had made. And over the years since then, I remained comfortable with that decision. So when Bob, you had me on the show a couple of years ago, it was to talk about the fact that when cancer is something that a person experiences, there's a lot of options and there's a lot of choices. And many times there's not just one exact choice, or sometimes there is. For me, the decision to go the route of the double mastectomy was what was going to be best for me physically, and from a long-term perspective.
Not to be political off the bat, but the current potential head of health in the United States of America, Robert Kennedy Jr., has been saying things about not having medical research, and that grants being put aside. And going through what you went through, Jennifer, I don't know how you could have recovered the way you did in the 2010-15 era versus, let's say, 1965, all the advances made in research and in healthcare that I'm sure facilitated your recovery. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do. Actually, years ago, you talk about years ago, mastectomies were done very differently. Really pre my era, I'm not exactly sure the year that it occurred, but it used to be that any reconstruction was done behind the pectoral muscle of the chest cavity. Whereas when I had mine done, and currently the reconstruction is done in front of the pectoral muscle, which basically maintains the structure of our muscular system so that the reconstructive is purely cosmetic. Whereas the women who had had the reconstruction in a different way years ago, it was a much more invasive process because they literally had to move the muscles of the chest out of the way to put those implants in. So I can tell you that I think my decision would have been very different had it not been an option to do it in front of the pectoral muscle, and if I had to have done it the more old-fashioned way.
I did a show last week with the Yale football team of 1974. They had their 50th anniversary, and one of the players is now an orthopedic surgeon. And I had him answer some questions about the importance of the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, and medical research. And he was very emphatic about how critical it is that we keep having research done to maintain the place we have in the world to help people. That's what it's all about. As a mental professional, when you first heard the word that you had cancer, tell me what your reaction was and how you tried to cope.
So my mother had breast cancer when she was in her 50s. And I think in the back of my mind, all of the screening that I had to go to for all of the years, there was that little part of me that always wondered and waited for the day that that was going to be a word that I would hear personally. And so it was shocking, even though I had kind of thought I was preparing myself for it all of those years. And it is a word nobody wants to hear. And for me, as I've described it to some of my friends now who are going through cancer, it's a air quote club that nobody wants to be in, but finds themselves in. So it's a lot of emotions, scared, sad, worried, worried about my daughter, all of the things that kind of go with that.
What did you do to keep yourself occupied so you didn't constantly just think about it and try to go on with your life?
So for me, the gym has always been my happy place and my mental health therapy. Working out has always been something for me that has kept me going. It has been the duct tape on my armor. It has been the strength, not just physically, but mentally, that has gotten me through. I am very fortunate that I had started my weightlifting journey prior to my cancer diagnosis. A couple of years prior to that, I had gained a few pounds and decided that I wanted to lose some weight. And I started working with my personal trainer, Bobby Calabrese. And he helped me initially. I was going to lose a few pounds and be able to get back to the size jeans that I wanted to get back into. And over time, we started doing things like deadlifting and benching. And I remember the first time we started doing any of those things, I looked at him and I said, "You do realize that I'm a middle-aged woman and you're asking me to do some things that I never would have considered myself able to do." But amazing thing happened, Bob. The more weight that went on the bar, the stronger I started to feel mentally, not just physically. And the weight room has managed to be, every time I've had to rebuild in my life from all of the things that have been thrown at me over the past 5 years, it's the place that I go to reset my mind and my spirit.
May I ask you, what do you weigh now?
Sure. Today I'm weighing in at 117.
And how much weight can you lift, Miss 117?
So I haven't started over the last couple of years. I have been competing. I compete in the IPA, which is the International Powerlifting Association. And my latest full meet, which would be bench, deadlift, and squat, I weighed in, and that was last November. I weighed in at 114, and my deadlift was 270, my bench was 115, and my squat was 200.
Just in case people don't believe you, let's see some pictures and videos just to make sure you're not fibbing. Jonathan, you want to put the pictures up, please? What is this one?
So that's a squat, and that is actually, we call it in the hole. In competition, you have to get to parallel. So if you kind of look at my legs, that is me on the ascension up. There's some commands that you have to follow when you're in competition. And it's just a still picture of me getting to the depth that I needed to and then standing up. It's hard for me to remember based on the picture, but I believe that photo had about 190 or 195 on it.
Do you have knee pads on for some reason?
Those are wraps. Those are leg wraps that cut the circulation off on your knee as you're wearing them, but it gives you a little bit of a spring. It is considered legitimate gear in competition.
Jonathan, let's look at the next picture. I want to see more than 190 pounds.
Come on, Jen. Come on, Jen. Up, 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 up.
Now, Jennifer, how much weight was that?
That was 115. So in a bench, you may have you saw some flags. You have to get 3 white flags. That was Bobby, my trainer. He gets to lift off, but then he has to step to the side. Then it comes down and descends onto your chest. You have to make contact with your chest. You have to keep your shoulder blades and your several body parts on the bench so that it's not lifting up. And when they yell the word press is when you can remove it from your chest, put it back into the starting position, and wait for the word rack before placing it back.
When my son Matthew played football at Richfield High School, he got into weightlifting, and I think between his junior and senior year, he got the award for the most improved weightlifter. I wasn't so excited that he was lifting so much weight, but he enjoys it. And now to this day, he lifts weights and does a lot of gym work every day. Let's see the next photo you have. I want to just see how strong you are.
Here we go. Come on. Lightweight.
How much weight was that, Jennifer?
That was 270 pounds.
Okay, I believe that you're strong. Now, tell me. Now I'm intimidated. I haven't. If you leave the boat, I'd be afraid of you. I would never be afraid of you. So tell me, you were not able to lift at some point in time. In fact, you had some recurrent physical problems that developed since the operation several years ago, right? And just briefly, what did that impact your ability to lift weights for a period of time?
It did. I've actually had a few things over the years. After my mastectomy a couple of years ago, I developed an unusual complication with my implants and had to undergo having the mastectomy redone. So that took me out of commission for a bit of time. Last year, the pictures that we just saw was my last full competition, meaning deadlift, squat, and bench. And I had done so, I had reached professional status, master level, which is basically my age group. And shortly after that, I had been having some weird sensations in my leg, but no one seemed to see what was going on until I found myself in the hospital and able to walk. Came to find out it had nothing to do with the weightlifting, but I had had an undiagnosed spinal condition that for a short period of time, I was all the way to using a walker, unable to walk without a cane because of a condition called spondylolisthesis and some narrowing of my joints in my spine. So after quite a bit of rehab, found myself a wonderful orthopedic doctor and pain management team. And with some diligent strength training in different ways, I found myself that I am back in the gym, was not able to do anything for quite some time. And now back training, back lifting, but only lifting. I'm benching. I'm not deadlifting anymore. That part of my career is over. My back squat career is over because although the weightlifting did not cause it, or nothing that I had done had ever caused it, it was a degenerative disease that, as I said, I was unaware of. But now that we are aware of it, I have to do everything that I can to make sure that I'm mobile and moving around for the rest of my life. So it's made me have to reevaluate some of the things that I have done to keep myself active and strong physically and mentally.
I want to, one of my favorite guests, you're one of my favorite guests also, but this lady has been on the most times. Her name is Michelle Phillips. And Michelle wrote a book called Happiness is a Habit. Happiness is a Habit. And the theme of her book is that in order to be happy, you need to have some routines. You need to find the things that make you, for me, Duke's playing tonight in basketball. They're playing at 10:30 against Arizona. I'll be watching that game. If I'm still awake, I'll be awake. And that gives me pleasure. We all have to pick our things that bring us pleasure. Some people get pleasure in eating too much ice cream, but that's luckily not what you had since you've been lifting weights. But the point I'm making is that if you can't do the things that bring you joy and happiness, that puts a great weight, I would presume, on you emotionally, psychologically, whatever. And my question is, A, did it? And I think you said it has. And B, how did you go about getting back into good rhythm? Because what you did may help others. And what we're trying to do, not just about you today, but to use you as an example of how others can work to make things better for themselves.
So to answer the first part of the question, yes, it was very hard. Those first weeks, I certainly never knew if I was even going to be able to get back into the gym and do everything that I had loved. Over time, as I was able to embrace the pieces that I still could do, that started to rebuild my spirit and my energy level with it. Because I've always been, anyone who knows me knows that I am more of a let's make lemonade out of lemons person rather than a pessimistic person. So I do always try to find the good in things. So I really had to channel the piece of, okay, I can't do this, but I can still do that. I have to be frank, though. We did have a competition recently, and it was my first competition since my back situation. I did compete. I was able to compete with a bench, and doing so in the fact that I was back to where I was in the video we saw. So I had matched it in my rebuilding. But it was hard, Bob. In answer to your question, I sat there missing what I couldn't do. But what I saw about it, as hard as it was my teammates, my friends. We had a new girl on our team this year who was able to embrace the enthusiasm of it. And I kind of paused and looked at it and said, you know, as we find what we like and what we love and what builds us, sometimes we can also share that with other people. And if we can share it with other people, we can help them fill their tank. And when we help other people fill their tank, sometimes our tank gets filled too. So that's what I've been trying to do as I've had to find my own new normal with this, is looking at it in that way.
It's part of your work in the divorce practice, the mental health side of things. I'm sure you get the same experience I get with my clients, and that is that there's usually one person who's less excited about getting divorced than the other. And for that person, it may manifest itself in terms of arguing for more time with the children if there's children, or arguing, I call it the canoe. And that's my very first divorce case. Everything was resolved, but who got the canoe, which is an insignificant part of the case. But to the people fighting, it was critical because they wanted to get, in that case, their last shot. When you're dealing with people who are very upset and are not because of the illness you have, but because of the divorce situation, you get people you'll deal with in your divorce mediation, arbitration, whatever phrase you get in and out. How do you try to help people in those situations to try to find something that lifts their spirits, like lifting weights lifts your spirits?
So what I usually ask people to do first is look at the things that have been successful to them over their years and pre-divorce, into what it is that helped them, what it is that helped give them some peace and some strength and some happiness. The other piece of it is helping people to look at it from a view other than their own. Many times when we're working with divorcing families, if we can look at it from the vantage point of their children rather than the vantage point of themselves, it helps them see things in a different way. You know, the families who are fighting over time with children, when we're talking about 4-year-olds, they don't even have a concept of time. For them, it's purely about relationship building. So if we can help parents see things from a different vantage point, that will help them sometimes get off their position and look at it in a more global, family-focused perspective going forward. And I think that's similar to what I had been trying to do for me personally, trying to get off my position of, I'm never going to be able to deadlift again, and move on to the vantage of, I'm going to be able to walk for as many miles as I want to walk. I'm going to someday be a grandmother who can pick up a grandchild, and still be able to move around and do the things that I need to do. So it really is about how do we help shift that perspective to something else, and allowing for the fact that sometimes you have to give yourself some grace. You know, there are days when you're just not going to be feeling it. And, you know, I've been known to say, okay, today's the day I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes and, you know, give myself a good cry or, you know, rest or something, and then pick myself back up. We can work around, but we also have to honor sometimes that we need a little space for things.
I'm not going to sing for you, but the song that comes to mind is Rolling Stones, right? You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. You know? And I'm also thinking that my grandson was 31 months old. His favorite word is now, which is, he'll say to Thomas, he'll say, hey, Thomas, I have a cookie for you after you, whatever. And he'll say, now. And sometimes we can't help it, but sometimes people going through tough times, legally, whatever, have difficulty not acting less mature than they'd like to be. My next question is a harder question, I think, for you, and that is, what do you do in your collaborative session when you find that the lawyer for one side or the other is interfering with possibly resolving the case? I'm sure that must happen, never with me, of course, but that must happen on occasion. What do you do when you have the professional? You're saying to yourself, I got the people where they need to be to resolve this case on the children's parenting time. Hey, but what the hell's wrong with you? Or, hey, lady, what's wrong with you? So how do you deal with the lawyers if you ever find one who's stubborn?
Well, if ever I would find one that was stubborn, It would depend the circumstances. I try to be as respectful as I can with people in public, so to say. But those who know me know that I have been known to make a phone call after a meeting and say, can we talk a little bit about what's going on? And try and help the lawyer or whoever it may be to see if they can look and say, is something going on? We hear things from our clients that sometimes are hard. And sometimes as professionals, we try to do what we think is best. That's a thing I hear a lot from lawyers and professionals in this field. So I'll just ask the question, what's going on? Are you noticing it as I'm noticing it? Or what are you trying to accomplish? Can we talk this through, and can you do it in a different way? Sometimes when we get to the root of that, then sometimes we can help even the professional get off a position and move to a more conciliatory way of managing things.
It's ever since COVID, I didn't know what Zoom was. I didn't know if anyone knew what Zoom was or Microsoft Teams or whatever. And now we're relying on it more and more and more. We don't typically have evidentiary hearings in court that are remote or actually Microsoft Teams. But my point is that I'm a big body language reader. And you're a big body language reader, I know from our discussions. And by not being in person, like I can't see right now if you're saying to yourself, oh my God, what a dumb question Bob's asking, which is not possible. But you can tell more so in person. And in fact, on those one or two occasions where I may have been a little stubborn, and I've seen lawyers who were stubborn with Jennifer, sometimes she gives you that little look with those beautiful eyes of Jennifer. She gives you the look in which to say, hey, Bob, let's get off it. We have about 2 minutes ago. You and I could talk about this topic for hours, but I'm going to give you like the last minute or so before I close out. Any thoughts more you have about the topics we're talking about how we're trying to help people, help ourselves be better for ourselves by having habits and things that make us happy?
It's really important to find what it is that makes you tick and helps us to, I use the duct tape on the armor analogy all the time. So whatever it may be, for me, it's the gym, whether it's a craft, whether it's something healthy, a walk, try to devote some time to find what it is that helps you fill the tank when you're needing it the most.
And don't forget, sometimes hearing a phone call from a friend you haven't talked to in 25 years or something like that, being the one who makes the phone call or receives it, it can be very, very helpful. Jennifer Champagne, you're the best. And I really appreciate your sharing a lot of personal stories about yourself. I look forward to having you on the show again in the future. I look forward to working with you again in the future. And I want to thank you for all you do, because you are more than about yourself. And you've told your story to yourself, but it's really to help others. And you are a very selfless person. Thank you so much for being who you are. Jennifer, hope you enjoyed the show.
Thank you, Bob.
This has been Bobby O, the Bob Potsner, or actually Bob Potsner, the Bobby O, saying have a great day.